Hi, my name is Carly Kirkland, and today I'm doing my multicultural project presentation over two books that I read in elementary school. The Red Scarf Girl, A Memoir of the Cultural Revolution by Jiling Jian, and Esperanza Rising by Pam Munoz Ryan. I chose The Red Scarf Girl as my non-Western title because it is set in China, which is traditionally a non-Western country. It is set during the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s. The Cultural Revolution was perpetuated by General Mao, and it sought to preserve the true communist ideology by purging remnants of capitalism and traditional elements from the country, defined as the Four Olds: customs, ideas, cultures, and habits. So Mao's goal, he wanted a proletariat revolution to the extreme, like all communist regimes of the time did. So the proletariat was traditionally the large working class made up of peasants and other skilled workers. So Mao was seeking to empower the proletariat class to become strong enough to overthrow the bourgeoisie made up of wealthy landowners and landlords. So Mao didn't want everyone to just reject capitalism. He also wanted them to reject anything that had to do with capitalism. So landlord would have been the epitome of this. So Jiling is growing up during this time and is chosen at school for a Liberation Army dance troupe. Her dad says, "That's great, that's wonderful that you were chosen, but you're probably not going to be able to do it because you won't pass the background check." Background checks were common during this time because it was very bad to be related to anyone who was a member of the bourgeoisie. So unfortunately for Jiling, her grandfather was a landlord, and so everyone shuns her family. Because of this, her dad is thrown into jail, and the government asks her to testify against her father to prove that he is in fact related to a member of the bourgeoisie. She refuses, obviously, and is sent to the wheat fields to do work. The story really doesn't get any better for her, but she eventually moves to the United States and starts a company to bring the Western and Chinese cultures together, and it's known as the East-West Exchange. So the two pieces of folk art that I chose to go along with the Red Scarf Girl are entitled The Village Festival and The Dragon Leaps Around the Grand Occasion. They're both by Zhang Yin, and they demonstrate a style of Chinese folk art that was born just after the Cultural Revolution. So art during this time was heavily censored to paint communist ideals in a very flattering light. So the Village Festival shows a typical village of the proletariat class that Mao would have supported. So it shows the proletariat in a very flattering light. The village looks very happy. It looks very not necessarily what you would consider to be a peasant life. It looks joyful. So I selected this piece because it shows the idealist perspective of the proletariat class that Mao would have enjoyed and sought to empower. So the dragon leaps around in the grand occasion. I chose this piece because it showcases the unity of the proletariat class that would have been necessary for it to overthrow the bourgeoisie. So everyone in this painting is wearing similar outfits of similar colors. So this portrays unity in the celebration involving the dragon. So it also portrays the proletariat in a very flattering light. So the next book that I chose was Esperanza Rising, and this book is a Western title because it takes place in Mexico and the United States, which are two very distinctly Western cultures. So the book takes place in the 1930s in Mexico, so this would have been the right after the Mexican Revolution. So up until the Mexican Revolution, Mexico had been controlled by a dictator named Porfirio Diaz. There was stability under his reign, but peasant life got worse while elite life got better due to the fact that Diaz greatly supported the bourgeoisie or large landowning class. He granted incentives to invest in their land, authorized the confiscation of village land while imposing high tariffs, and implemented very restrictive labor policies. So there was a very deep sense of land inequality, and because peasant life was getting worse, the peasants eventually banded together and revolted against the large landowning class. So Esperanza is the daughter of a very wealthy landowner, and she's very pampered because of this. And even though the revolution is over at this point, there's a lot of resentment against wealthy landowners such as her father. So because of this, bandits capture and kill her father one day while he is working in the fields. His evil stepbrother takes over, and her mother has one of two choices. She can either marry the evil stepbrother in hopes of getting her husband's inheritance, or she can take Esperanza and flee to the United States in search of a better life. So she decides to flee the country with Esperanza and three of her servants, one of whom's name is Miguel. So they end up in California at a company farm where living conditions aren't good at all. They're nothing like the life that Esperanza used to know, and she notices how poorly workers are treated and the immigrant workers are treated in the United States. Her main goal throughout the book is to bring her abuela, or her grandmother, to the United States with her. Miguel eventually sees this and helps her bring her grandmother to the United States with all of the money that she's earned working in farm sheds. The story ends with Esperanza wanting to learn English, start a family, and buy a home in the United States. She is far from her traditional happy life at home, but she is happy. She eventually falls in love with Miguel, and so the story ends with a very hopeful attitude. So the piece of folk art that I selected for this is by Frida Kahlo, who is a Mexican artist who used folk art to explore questions of identity, gender, class, and race. She belongs to a post-revolutionary movement known as Mexicayote, which sought to define the Mexican identity. So this would have been, I selected this because this search for identity and purpose is a major theme in Esperanza Rising. And Esperanza really doesn't know what she's meant to do as an immigrant in the United States, but the book ends with her kind of finding a goal and finding out what she wants to be within her identity as an immigrant. So I chose these two titles because I found it incredibly interesting that they were both rooted in revolutions that occurred because of class differences. So even though they were worlds apart, the Mexican Revolution and the Cultural Revolution were both rooted in differences in land ownership, which translate into different social classes. So I believe that this factor makes these books applicable to children and adults of all cultures due to the fact that differences in social class occur across the globe. So no matter what culture you're in, what time period you're in, social class and class differences have always been an issue or a point of contention. So when I read these books, I was able to relate to them even though I'm not Chinese or Mexican. So these books are great for allowing children not only of Chinese and Mexican cultures, but of other cultures as well, to relate to the struggles of children in other cultures, thus improving relations among cultures. So, and they're also obviously very relatable for both Chinese children and Hispanic children. So, yeah, no, I think that it is very important for children to read these books, and they would deeply benefit from delving into them. So thank you very much.